All right, today we are jumping into a real medical detective story. It's a puzzle that stumped doctors for decades. And solving it was absolutely critical to preventing one of the most devastating complications of diabetes, foot amputation. The whole mystery revolved around something in the foot that just seemed to be vanishing. So, let's get into it.
But first, let me ask you a question. When you think about your foot, what do you figure is its single most important protective feature? It's not the bones, it's not your arch. Nope, it's something much softer, and as you're about to see, much, much more mysterious.
And here it is. This is the hero of our story, the plantar fat pad. It's this beautifully engineered cushion of fat cells, all held in these tightly woven chambers right under the ball of your foot and your heel. Its job? Well, it's simple, but it is absolutely critical. It's your body's built-in shock absorber. But here's the thing. When this cushion fails, especially in people with diabetes, the consequences are just disastrous. The bones are left totally unprotected, pressure skyrockets, and the skin can break down. This leads to ulcers that, in the worst-case scenarios, can end in amputation. So the stakes really couldn't be higher. So let's take a closer look at why this little fat pad is so incredibly important, why it's considered the foot's last line of defense. You know, the design is just brilliant. You've got these little pockets of fat cells, the adipocytes, and they're packed into these compartments that are formed by fibrous walls. And get this, those walls are anchored directly to the skin below and the bones above. This creates this super stable, pressure-absorbing cushion that protects everything inside your foot every single time you take a step. For years and years, when doctors saw this cushion start to thin out and disappear in their patients with diabetes, they had what seems like a very, very logical explanation. The prime suspect was atrophy. The theory was that the fat pad was simply wasting away, that the fat cells themselves were shrinking, dying off. It made sense. And it was the leading theory for a really long time. And they even had a plausible mechanism for how it happened, a process called glycation. In a nutshell, when there's too much sugar in your blood, it can basically get sticky and glom onto proteins like collagen, the very stuff that makes up those support walls in the fat pad, and it makes them get all stiff and distorted. So the atrophy theory went like this. High blood sugar leads to glycation, which messes up the structure of the fat pad. At the same time, diabetes damages tiny blood vessels, which reduces blood flow. And so the thinking was, the combination of these two things basically starved the fat cells, causing them to shrink and die. A classic case of atrophy. It all made perfect sense until, well, it didn't. The big turning point came from a study that asked a very simple but totally case-cracking question. So back in 2009, a group of researchers decided to actually look at the fat cells under a microscope. And what they found was stunning. I mean, look at this quote. They found no statistically significant difference in the size of the fat cells between patients with diabetes and healthy people. The cells weren't shrinking. The entire atrophy theory was suddenly standing on very, very shaky ground. And this, of course, led to one huge question. If the cushion isn't wasting away, if the fat cells aren't dying, then where on earth is it going? The answer was a completely new theory, a radical shift in thinking. It wasn't a biological breakdown at all. It was a mechanical problem. It was the great fat pad migration. Okay. So here's how it really works. It's a chain reaction. It all starts with nerve damage from diabetes. This weakens the small muscles inside the foot, creating an imbalance. That imbalance causes the toes to pull back into what's called a claw or hammer toe shape. And, this is the key, because the fat pad is physically attached to the base of the toes, that deformity literally pulls the entire cushion forward right out from under the ball of the foot. And you can see it so clearly right here. It's pretty wild. On the left, that's a healthy foot. You can see that yellow fat pad is exactly where it's supposed to be, cushioning the ball of the foot. But now look at the right. See what that claw toe deformity did? It has physically dragged that cushion forward. It's all bunched up uselessly under the toes, leaving those bones completely exposed. So the big takeaway, the huge light bulb moment is this. The fat pad isn't vanishing. It's just not where it's supposed to be. It's been pulled right out of its vital, weight-bearing position. But you know, a good theory needs proof. It needs a smoking gun. And researchers found one using a really powerful imaging tool. They used high-resolution MRI to literally peer inside the feet of patients, allowing them to measure precisely how thick the fat pad was in different spots. Now, let's look at the data, because this is where it gets undeniable. This first chart shows that critical area, the cushion right under the ball of the foot. In the healthy control group, it's a nice, thick 6 millimeters. But in the group with the toe deformities, wow, it's down to just 2.5 millimeters. That's less than half the thickness. So where did that missing cushion go? Well, this chart brilliantly shows us. They measured the fat pad thickness under the toes. In the control group, it's about 7.6 millimeters. But in the deformity group, look at that. It's now 9.1 millimeters. It's not gone, it just got bunched up in the wrong place. This was it, the absolute, irrefutable proof of migration. And this discovery completely changed the game. Because if the problem isn't atrophy, if it's a mechanical displacement, then the solutions have to be totally different. This has ushered in a whole new era of prevention and promise. So the focus has shifted. Treatment now is all about addressing the mechanics. Things like specialized shoes to give the foot more room, surgery to actually correct the toe deformity and allow that fat pad to slide back, and even procedures to add cushioning back into that critical area. And the future looks even more promising. Researchers are now exploring using a patient's own fat and stem cells, a process called autografting, to not just supplement the cushion, but to potentially regenerate the fat pad itself, rebuilding it from the ground up. Which leaves us with a final, really fascinating thought. After decades of chasing a phantom, this idea of atrophy, we finally understand the real problem. And with that new understanding comes this incredible possibility. Could we one day not just patch the problem, but actually rebuild the foot's perfect natural shock absorber from the inside out? The investigation continues.